Good evening, and thank you for watching. My name is Nathan Brown. I cover the House of Representatives for the Arizona Capitol Times, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's Legislative District 11 Democratic primary debate. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor for this event. As the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections hosts debates so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter most to them, and vote informed. Candidates that have a contested primary election have been invited to participate in the debate. Candidates that have opted into the Clean Elections Clean Funding Program are required to participate, while traditional candidates are invited and encouraged to attend. Please note, candidates from both the Senate and House are participating in the debate tonight. When voting in a primary election, choosing between candidates of the same political party, so their preferred nominee may advance to the general election. As the moderator, I will ensure candidates have the opportunity to engage directly with their respective opponents. The questions that will be asked this evening are coming directly from voters. Leading up to the debates, Clean Elections conducted outreach to voters across the state asking for questions for the candidates. Additionally, Clean Elections surveyed voters to learn what issues are important to them. This survey data, along with input from the experienced journalists at the Arizona Capitol Times, Arizona Agenda and Green Valley News, and Sahuarita Sun, have been utilized to guide the discussion so it best serves voters. Of course, we want to hear directly from you, the voter. So, voters that are watching this debate live, you can submit a question at any time by email, debates@kc-a.com. That's debates@kc-a.com. By text to 480-808-1814. That's 480-808-1814. Or by phone at 480-937-1253. That's 480-937-1253. Please specify if your question is for a specific candidate or for all the candidates. We screen questions for clarity to eliminate duplications, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. The debate is scheduled for an hour and a half, so we may not get to all audience questions, but we will do our best. Candidates, you will have 1 minute for your opening and closing statements and 2 minutes for your responses to voter questions. We encourage an open exchange of dialogue between opponents. If you feel the need to respond to another candidate's comments, you may do so. I may limit responses for time management purposes, and we remind the candidates and the audience that this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal tonight is to connect candidates and voters so our electorate may vote informed. Candidates running for the state Senate who are with us here tonight are Janelle Cavero and Janelle Wood. Candidates running for the State House of Representatives who are with us here tonight are Shams Abdus-Samad, Michael Butts, Oscar de los Santos, Wesley Leasy, Marcelino Quinones, and Nikita Ross. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name, with the Senate starting with the opening statements, and we'll progress from there. So, Ms. Cavero, will you start us with the opening remarks, please?
Thanks so much, Nate. Appreciate it. My name is Janelle Cavero, and I'm currently running to represent South Mountain, South Phoenix, Laveen, and Guadalupe in the state Senate. Thank you to all those who signed my petition to help me get on the ballot. I have proudly raised my two daughters in South Mountain for almost 10 years. I'm a small business owner, community advocate, and government affairs specialist. Growing up in a labor union, working class, immigrant home has instilled in me the passion for equity, equal opportunity, and economic security. When you grow up in poverty, you don't know when you're in poverty. I had a great childhood. My mother made my clothes. We shopped at Goodwill. My father's union job helped my mom take her board exams and afforded us a home. My parents instilled their values of hard work and resilience. I'm not saying it was easy. Financial hardships and social expectations are tough on working families. When you are made fun of because of shoes that you wear, the type of food that's in your lunchbox, all you can do is say a prayer in your mind. I worked 2 jobs while pursuing an undergraduate and graduate degree. For the last 25 years, I worked in federal government fighting for voting rights, veterans health care, transportation, and environmental issues. I worked at Arizona Fair Housing Center, have witnessed the economic and racial discrimination. This district deserves to be represented by a real Democrat, one that values democracy and public education. I'm not here to gain favors. Loyalty to the community is true representation. I hope to take my experience, fight for this beautiful district, and continue to defend the rights for minorities, women, and children at the state capitol. I want to remind you that when we can agree to disagree. However, when you come to that table as a public servant, you better be sure to be able to leave that table knowing you've done all you could for your community to move forward in a timely and respectful manner. I'm here today to ask for your vote in our primary election. Thanks so much, Nate.
All right, thank you. Ms. Wood, it's your turn.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Nate, and welcome to all of my colleagues here on this call. I am here as Janelle Wood. I am running for State Senate in LD 11 because right now, our children need someone to fight for their future and their hope. Our children need adults at the table who are willing to put differences aside and create legislation that positively impacts their well-being and educational goals. Right now and in the future, no matter their race, no matter their ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, social economic background or abilities, right now, our children need to be in a safe and supportive learning environments, free from bullying, fear of retaliation, and free to be their true, authentic selves. Right now, our children need for their parents to have access to good paying jobs, to be able to put food on their tables and pay their bills. Right now, our children and their families need access to affordable health care, especially now in light of COVID and its residual effects that it's had on our elderly and our families that are immune compromised. Our families need internet. As I looked at our district, we have about 42% of individuals in our district in certain areas and pockets that do not have internet, which means it limits their opportunities for virtual learning and employment opportunities that are remote. They need a stable home life. Many of our families are being uprooted due to rents that they can't afford. We have upwards up to 40% of our different pockets in our community that are renters, and even then some. Well, our community needs to be safe, a place for our children to come where they can live and they can play, free from the interrogations and the excessive force of police. I am Janelle Wood, a mother, an advocate, an activist, and I am a voice for the needs and welfare of our precious children and our youth who reside in this wonderful, diverse, rich district, LD 11. And I'm here for not only our children, but the children across our state. Thank you. I ask that you will vote for me in this upcoming election.
All right, thank you. Ms. Abdul Samad, it's your turn.
Good evening, voters. My name is Shams Abdul Samad. I'm a clean election candidate running for Arizona House of Representatives from our District 11. Thank you, candidates and the Arizona Clean Election Board for this opportunity. Allow me to tell you a little about myself and why I have decided to run for this office. I'm a fellow Democrat growing up in Phoenix, and for most of those years living in Laveen, I graduated from Phoenix Union High School District. I'm a proud Sun Devil graduate with a bachelor and a master's in engineering. I have been actively involved with the Arizona Democratic Party for over a decade, working in many and varied positions. Professionally, I have been an educator teaching pre-K to college level students. I'm also a tax analyst, which benefited me in my 8 years as treasurer for LD 27 and now LD 11. When I started my campaign, my priorities were education, voting rights, infrastructure, and more. However, the dynamics are changing every day. There was a Supreme Court leak followed by the horrific mass shootings in New York, California, and Uvalde, Texas, as well as the total of 250 mass shootings nationally since January. In our state, we have redistricting designed to suppress the vote. We are also in a serious drought, increasing the wildfires that are destroying our beautiful public lands. The state budget is currently being debated, and education is the bottom of the majority party's priorities. All of these are my priorities. Our country and our state is broken. We need to fix it. We need sensible gun reform. We need to make sure that women's rights are not infringed upon. We need to prioritize education. As your representative, I will first come to you and my Democratic colleagues in the legislature and work hard on your issues. I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thank you, Nate.
All right, thank you. Mr. Butts, you're next.
Good evening. Thank you, Nate. Thank you for my fellow candidates being here. And thank you to every voter, every door that opened up their home to me, and every conversation we've had, everyone that signed my petition. Thank you. You're the reason why I'm here. And just to kind of tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a father to a blended family, almost like the Brady Bunch. I'm a husband to a nurse practitioner, and I'm a brother to two Ford plant employees, part of the United Auto Workers Union. And so I lived a life of public service, okay? My life of public service includes a couple of years of police officer experience. I was a police officer for Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a current educator right now. I taught 5 years altogether. 2 years I spent in the classroom teaching 12th graders about global issues and how to advocate for those global issues. I also taught for 3 years social studies to 5th graders. That means teaching 10 and 11-year-old students about our democratic processes. And so I got a great joy and great satisfaction out of that. Throughout my career of public service and public life, I saw problems and challenges that I knew could not be solved on a local jurisdictional level. And so that is the reason why I'm here. That's the reason why I'm interested in helping solve the unique problems that are here and only specific to Arizona. We have a great state. Our state is not broken. We just have some challenges that we need to overcome. And so I'm excited to be here to talk and converse with my fellow candidates. And I'm excited about our voters being able to hear what we have to say today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. De Los Santos.
Good evening. My name is Oscar De Los Santos. I'm very proud to be running for the seat. I want to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm running. I'm the proud son of Mexican immigrants who came to this country to work hard. I'm a former public school teacher in South Phoenix, and I'm the former head of public policy for the Association of Arizona Food Banks, one of Arizona's largest anti-poverty organizations. It's these experiences, as the son of Mexican immigrants, as a public school teacher who has seen and lived firsthand the defunding that the Republicans have done to our classrooms, and as somebody who has seen the economic devastation that many of our families are living in due to Doug Ducey's so-called leadership, that have pushed me to run for office. I'm running to make healthcare a human right, to make housing affordable, and to increase teacher pay. Before advocating here in Arizona for our families, I worked in the Obama White House as an advisor at the White House National Economic Council, and I earned a master's degree in public policy from the University of Oxford, where I studied as a Rhodes Scholar. I look forward to this debate and look forward to earning your support. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Elise.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Sorry about that. I'd like to thank everyone for allowing me the opportunity to speak here today, to you and also to the voters. My name is Wesley Lisi, and I'm running for House of Representatives there in LD 11. I'm no politician by any stretch of the imagination. Instead, I'm a practical-minded man who sees the polarization in the government affecting everyday citizens. I want to see a change, and that's what I'm here for. To tell you a little bit about myself, I am the oldest of 8, grew up in Mississippi, which is a state that is definitely like ours as far as on the bottom scale of the educational spectrum. I grew up in that environment. I'm from a home that's a blue collar worker home. I'm the oldest of 8 kids, and I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship to go to college. That was the only way. Now, as I've been here, I've been a coach. I've been a professional football player with the Cardinals. I've been a participant in nonprofit organizations. I work with teachers. I work with kids. I'm a small business owner, construction company, and I've been and walked in many different spectrums of life. That's allowed me to reach out to many different people in the business world and also from people just like me, everyday people, blue collar workers. I've been homeless. I've been on the street. I've also had the ability to have something in my pocket. And I'm here to provide an opportunity for everyone, an opportunity and equality. And I see that to be the case. And I want to bring that to the district. I also want to bring that to the state with more diversity, more opportunity for everyone, not just a small few. Thank you for the opportunity to run and speak with you today. And I look forward to this conversation and engagement with everyone. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Representative Quinones, you're up.
Thank you, Nate. Clean Elections, thank you for hosting all of us tonight. Nate, really appreciate you facilitating tonight's conversation. To my fellow candidates, both in the Senate and in the House, thank you so much for answering the call to be leaders within our district. I appreciate all of your efforts so far. And to you, the voters, thank you. Thank you for taking part in democracy and ensuring that our democracy in our country and in our state thrives. I am really grateful to you, and I look forward to tonight's conversation. As your state representative, I have done my best to continue my servant leadership in our district. A graduate of South Mountain High School and then Arizona State University, I became a teacher here in this district, and I was able to empower 78% of the sophomores to pass the standardized reading and writing exam. Afterwards, I joined the Roosevelt School District Governing Board, where I was able to reduce the class size from 32 down to 28. We were able to give every single individual of that board and of that community a 5% pay increase, because I believe that when our teachers and our administrators and our staff are sponsored, they do the best. Afterwards, I was a director at St. Vincent de Paul and then a director at Arizona State University. All of these things have been in service to the district. Based on my experience, my priorities are to ensure that our teachers and our educational system thrives. I am tired of Arizona being at the bottom of the barrel in terms of how much we spend per student. And since joining the legislature, I've fought arduously every single day to ensure that we bring those resources. Additionally, I want to invest in technical schools and our community colleges, because I believe that if young people have a path forward and they have the resources necessary, they can go far. Finally, my final priority for this moment is elections. An election result should not change all of the dynamics. And since 2020, the legislature has introduced over 100 pieces of legislation that attack your right to vote. I've stood on the floor, I've advocated against them, I've told them why they're wrong, and I'll continue those efforts. Looking forward to the conversation. I invite you all to also visit my website, marcelino4az.com, so you can learn more and also let me know what's important to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Ross, it's your turn.
Thank you, Nate. And thank you, Clean Elections Commission, for putting this on. My name is Nikita Ross. I'm a social worker by trade, and I've been advocating for children, families, and public education for over 10 years. I grew up in foster care, and as a survivor of the foster care system, I faced and overcame many challenges. It is these lived experiences, coupled with being a mother of a veteran and a mother of a child with special needs, that gave me the courage to be the first and at the time only elected member of the Phoenix Union Governing Board to vote no on renewing our contract of having armed, uniformed police on our campuses around children. This is just one example of my dedication and leadership to our community. Whether it comes to abortion, education, affordable housing, transgender rights, or any other issues facing our community, we need representation that we can trust. I will bring lived experiences to the legislature to ensure that all voices and votes are being heard. Join me and let's build a strong, secure, and resilient family and community together. Thank you, Nate.
All right, thank you. And our first question is going to be on education. Do you believe Arizona's K-12 public education system is adequately funded? If not, what needs to be done to fix it, and where should the money come from? Ms. Wood, could you start us off?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nate. Yeah, I do not believe that our Arizona K through 12 schools, public schools, are fully funded. For sure. I'm going to be the one that fights for that as well. Our schools are lagging behind in all sorts of resources. And one of them is our teachers. We are not taking care of our teachers. They're not getting the salaries that they need. We need to put the things in place for them so that they can have their mental health taken care of, and that these class sizes are reduced. We know as well as anyone else here that have been parents, that have worked with the schools, and I've done a lot of work with our schools. I've sat on many councils and many committees and many task force talking about the needs of our schools and making sure that our schools have funding. I know that we don't have enough adults in that space. So a lot of our children are suffering from lots of traumas. Many of our kids of color, our children of color, were suffering for traumas pre-COVID, and then COVID did not help our children. And so now even more, we need mental health counselors in these schools, and that's what we need a lot of funding for. We cannot just have 1 or 2 counselors for 700 and some people. That is not going to work. And so I believe that we need to fund for mental health. We need to get parents the help that they need. We need a lot of social services that we need to bring to our schools because many of our families live in trauma. I looked at our numbers today, and 44%, up to 44% of our people in this district live in poverty. So that means our children are living in poverty. That means we need meals, we need things, we need clothing, they need personal hygiene. So there are so many needs that our funding our public schools will do, fully funding them. So I will be a person that will definitely fight for that. I've always sat on school meetings, trying to be that voice, but also wanted to make sure that we have the training, culturally competent teachers that are working with our children and making sure that they feel safe in their spaces. So yes, thank you so much, Nate, for that question. And thank you to the voter who asked that question.
All right, thank you. Ms. Kama Abdul Samad.
Thank you for that important question. Can you please repeat the question again?
Sure. Do you believe Arizona's K-12 public education system is adequately funded? And if not, what needs to be done to fix it, and where should the money come from?
It is not adequately funded. We are 48th in the nation in terms of public education system. Currently, the Arizona Republican majority lawmakers are trying to pass a budget of $16.8 billion for the upcoming fiscal year. And as usual, schools are their lower priorities. Only $259 million is allocated in spite of the requested $550 to $800 million. As you can see, this is severely underfunded. We have a $6 billion surplus. I will use a substantial portion of the current $6 billion surplus to at least $3 billion to finally improve the public education system in the state of Arizona. We will finally hire the hundreds of additional teachers and decrease class sizes in Arizona so our kids can get the attention they absolutely need to succeed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Butts.
Thank you, Nate. To answer to your question, I don't believe that education is adequately funded, and adequate is a tricky word. And I'll start with this. Beginning with preschool. Preschool needs to be fully funded so that we get a great foundation going for our students. And so with funding preschool fully across the board, I think that we can get off to a better start. Starting in, and then moving on to kindergarten. Kindergarten is right now currently only a half a day funded type of source. And so it's not mandatory for kindergartners to go the full day. And so I believe that if we were to change how we structure that, our kindergartners can even go even further than what they're going now as far as time with teachers, time with curriculum. And so I'll stop there. But moving on to class size. Class sizes are absolutely ineffective. And so as a teacher for 5 years, being in the classroom personally, I know for a fact that, it's challenging to meet the demands of 25, 30 students in your classroom, all that have different ways of learning, different types of differentiation that need to be enacted and throughout your curriculum. And so as a teacher, I would say that once we reduce those class sizes, especially from K through third, reducing those to 15, at least 15 students. And then if you move on to fourth through 12th grade, I think no more than 22, 23 students. I think that's adequate to really reach every student the way they need to be reached. And so when we move on from class sizes, we need to talk about salaries, of course. Salaries need to be factored into that. And so, I think about, certain scenarios and situations where we have certain temporary funding that is established right now that's going to expire, it's going to run out. And so when you talk about adequate funding, no, we're not adequately funded. We're not. And so we need to remove those time limits through grants. We need to restructure grants and make them more long-term and permanent. So I'll stop there. Thank you, Nate.
All right, thank you. Mr. De Los Santos.
No, absolutely not. The way our schools are funded is disgusting. It's barbaric, and it's the result of decades of Republican rule. That needs to be said, and that needs to be made very, very clear. As our schools are being starved of funding, as teachers are being pushed out of the profession due to low pay, the Republicans and the Republican governor are giving a $2 billion tax cut to the wealthy. I find that abhorrent. Taxpayers have time and again passed ballot measures increasing taxes on the wealthy. That's where the money needs to come from. We need to tax the rich. It's time for the special treatment from the lobbyists and for the corporations to end. We need to invest in our schools. And I think a couple things we need to do. Yes, absolutely. Early childhood education, the science and the evidence is absolutely clear. High quality early childhood education is key. Arizona doesn't provide that. We're living like we're in the 17 or 1800s. It's barbaric, it's disgusting, and it needs to end. We need full day kindergarten. We need a massive pay increase for teachers. When I was a teacher, I was making less than $29,000 a year. That is a poverty wage. It is despicable. These are public servants who are key to our community, and we cannot be treating teachers this way. A couple other areas we need to invest in. We talked about K through 12. We also need to talk about colleges. We cannot keep saddling young people with debt. In office, I will fight for the end of tuition at every single Arizona public college and university. We must make tuition-free community colleges and public universities, and we will do it by taxing the rich and ending preferential treatment for special interests and corporations.
All right, thank you. Mr. Alisi.
Thanks for the question. For me, this issue about K through 12 being unfunded is very true. We need to develop and have more resources dedicated toward education. Listen, I'm from a state that's competing with Arizona in the education spectrum as far as we're number 49, they're number 50, and we go back and forth with that. This is a very complicated issue that we're talking about. If Arizona, I think education is going to be one of our most, if not the most important resource that Arizona has in its future compared to any other state. There are a lot of tech organizations, tech companies moving here to Arizona. There's a reason why. But if we are to maintain and hold that interest so we can provide better for our students with the resources, we need to work on education. There's a lot of issues that are going on with the teachers. They're unfunded. They're doing a fantastic job with the amount of resources that they have under their availability. They're having to spend their resources. Some of these teachers can't afford to pay for their own rent. So we need to devise programs that can help them subsidize what they're having, what they're living on, different resources to help them. And we're also dealing with students. They need mental health within the school system. We have counseling that needs to be more available. Representative Marcelino, I think he sponsored or backed the bill to increase the amount of counselors that a student would be able to have in a school system. We need to improve on that. School is the most important resource that we have. If we don't work on that, develop that infrastructure for schools, Arizona is a lost cause. We have to work on it. We have to work on the schools. We have to work on the teachers, and we have to make it more competitive too. We need better teachers. In order to get the better teachers, we have to have competitive wages, competitive resources they can have, healthcare insurance. We need to provide that housing for the students, for the teachers, for the betterment of my district, but also for Arizona. This is the most important resource. And for people that don't think so, look at Mississippi, my home state. I love it to death, but it is behind. And if we're going to compete like we are, we're doing a fantastic job, need some improvement, but education is going to be that. More funding across the board. And also with the security. This is another issue. How are we going to deal with security with the students over in Texas and across the United States being faced with security at the schools? We have to develop different resources and monies for that. How are they going to be paid for? Thank you for the question. I really appreciate it. And we will do something about it.
All right, thank you. Representative Quinones.
Thank you, Nate. I really appreciate everything that has been shared so far. And let me tell you my response to everything that's been shared so far. Since December, when I was appointed to the legislature, I have been active in advocating for all of the things that have been mentioned. Let's go back to the beginning and how we arrived at this situation. Education in Arizona is greatly underfunded. And it's underfunded because in 1980, the legislature passed what's called the aggregate expenditure limit, which limits the amount of money that could be spent per year to support our schools. A lot has changed in 42 years. So we need to go back to that antiquated law and change it. And you know what I've done in the session this year? I've sponsored legislation that got rid of it this year to allow our schools to continue. And I've also sponsored legislation that would get rid of the aggregate expenditure limit all downright, so that moving forward, we can adequately invest in our schools. What that will do is we will increase the base funding. That means that our principals and our administrators and our superintendents know exactly where those dollars need to go. You know what the Republican solution to the teacher shortage is? They want to continue to reduce the qualifications. Our teachers, and I speak as a teacher and I speak as a sibling of two individuals who are also teachers. Our teachers help mold and create the future, and they should be compensated adequately. They provide ingenuity, they provide creativity, they provide support for our students. If we adequately fund our teachers, then they will not take their talents elsewhere. We need to do that. Mr. Lisi, thank you for mentioning that bill. That's right. Ms. Wood mentioned the need for mental health issues. The first bill that I ever introduced in my session is HB 2667. What that bill would do is it would provide $19 million this session alone to increase the number of counselors per schools. When the bill was dropped, the number was at 870 students per school for one counselor. My bill would have brought it down to 550 to 1. That's not even enough, but it's a start. Statistics show that it needs to be at 250 to 1. My bill would at least get us moving forward, because let me tell you something else. You need to be able to work with multiple individuals. We're going to hear a lot of different ideas, and they're terrific. But in order to get a lot of those ideas done, you're going to have to be able to build coalition and collaborations to get support behind those ideas. And that's what I've done. The last thing that I think we need to do is we do need to continue to support our community colleges and our technical schools, because again, I believe that if students and young people have a path forward, they'll get there. Nate also asked the question, where does this money come from? Arizona right now has a $5.3 billion surplus. And you know who's responsible for that surplus? All of us. That surplus comes from sales taxes. That means that our dollars need to go back into the things that we believe. Right now, the Supreme Court is stacked. And the reason why the bills were not able to move forward in terms of investing in our schools is because of the aggregate expenditure limit. So I wanted to provide you with the history in terms of where we're at and what we need to do to move forward. So I look forward to this conversation, and I look forward to continuing to advocate for this issue, because I'm an educator and I come from a family of educators. Thank you, Nate.
All right, thank you. Ms. Ross.
So no, I do not think that our public education system is adequately funded. As a school board member and as a mother of a child in the public education system, I experienced the lack of appropriate funding firsthand. As a district, we've had to be creative with the limited funds that we receive from the state, but we never want our staff to feel undervalued. So we approve raises, not just for our teachers, but for all of our staff in the district on a very tight shoestring budget that we get from the state. We need to increase our education funding to the national level. These vouchers, STOs, and ESAs do not benefit the families in my community and have been implemented as a distraction from how underfunded our schools are. The research is clear that when public and private schools get equal funding, public schools outperform. Our children who need additional assistance, like my daughter, are being massively underserved by an education funding formula that is decades out of date. We need to fully fund full-day kindergarten. And as a longtime education advocate, I will fight for funding to go where it is desperately needed, our public education system. Thank you, Nate.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Cavero?
First of all, thank you to everybody who shared today on this question. It's extraordinarily important. We all know that education is the most powerful weapon. And today it blows my mind with what Marcelino said, $5.3 billion surplus, and we should not be cutting into public education. It's not funded. We should be making record investments into our kids. Our children are an investment. There's no excuse for where we are today. Just as we hold our schools accountable to educating our kids, I'm going to hold the governor and other elected officials accountable for funding our schools properly. We have to work close with our state superintendent of public instruction and local regional educational leaders, school districts to safely keep our schools open. You know, as someone who has a family of educators, we need to increase teacher pay. It's not a livable wage. Most of them have 2 jobs. We're simultaneously breaking down our public education system. An opportunity for every child and every individual. These children will be taking care of us in years to come. We need to increase capital funding to provide all of our students with proper books and access to technology. We need to increase education revenue due to the growth of mental health issues, just as Ms. Wood said, with everything that's going on. Then there's a shortage of our substitute teachers. If I was in the legislature, I would definitely promote the public-private partnership with other community colleges and universities to support this shortage. We just need to stop the repeated attacks on public education. And together, I know everybody who's on this call today feels that way. We want to fight for our district. Again, education is key. And so, no, I don't believe that it's funded well. And it's unfortunate because I have an opponent who's not here today who voted with Doug Ducey to cut money into public schools. And so I want to bring that apparent. Catherine Miranda isn't on this call, and it is important to me that we have a fully funded public education. So thank you, Nate. It was a great question.
All right, thank you. And our next question is about abortion. The Supreme Court is expected to issue a ruling on Roe v. Wade later this month, and it looks like they may be planning on overturning it entirely. If that does happen, what will you do to fight for abortion rights in Arizona, and what kind of state-level abortion laws will you support? Ms. Abdus-Samad, can you start us off?
Thank you for that question. I believe that as your state representative, I'll work to assure women's rights are not infringed upon. As for abortion, the choice is medical and it is between a woman and her doctor. Let me add, even if Roe v. Wade is overturned, there is still HIPAA, which protects all women, all health information. The act was signed into law by Bill Clinton protecting doctor-patient confidentiality. Under these anti-abortion laws, that act would be violated. Therefore, it would require not just abortion illegal, but HIPAA would also have to be repealed. Thank you, Nate.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Butts?
Thank you, Nate. So when it comes to abortion, and if I understand the question correctly, you want to know how we feel about abortion and the Roe versus Wade, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when it comes to abortion laws and the conversations that have already occurred at the local, state, and Supreme Court level, these conversations were already resolved. These conversations were already addressed very thoroughly and very appropriately. And the fact that we're facing these conversations again is very, very concerning. You know, what is the motive? What is the intent? Why are we having to come back to the table for these same conversations that was already resolved? And so in response to how I feel about abortion, you know, we all come through the womb of a woman. And I believe that is a sacred place, a sacred space, a sacred conversation. And so who should be having that conversation? Women should be having that conversation. Women should be at that table having that conversation. So I don't feel like we can have that conversation without women. And so to be able to give you my thoughts on abortion, I would prefer that, you know, women are leading that conversation ultimately. And so that is what I want to say about abortion. It is a topic that concerns women's bodies. And so they should be at the forefront of this discussion.
All right. Mr. De Los Santos?
We cannot be timid about this issue. This is an incredibly important issue, and we must protect the right to an abortion, period. You're absolutely right. The right-wing Supreme Court, which has been radicalized and packed by Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump, is set to roll back a fundamental constitutional right in the coming days or weeks. When that happens, radical politicians here in the state of Arizona are going to be instituting laws that will criminalize, penalize, and potentially incarcerate patients and providers. That is morally reprehensible, and that is egregiously terrible public policy. I oppose it with full force in office. As I said, I will fight to protect the right to an abortion. That's why I've been endorsed by Planned Parenthood, and that's what I have to say about that.
All right. Mr. Lisi?
Great question. You know, first of all, I have to say that I'm not really qualified to answer this question. I'm not a female, but being that the question has been asked, this is about choice. We live in America. This is about free choice for a woman to have the right to choose what she wants to do with her body, not my body, not anyone else's. And I don't think government should stand in anyone's way about deciding what they can and can't do with their bodies. If there is a question about that, this should be left up to the woman, person, and their physician to choose, for government to step in. And we're a country that wants to limit government. We want regulation, but we don't want to tell any person in the United States what they can and can't do. This is a free opportunity, free state, free country. The woman should be able to choose. Now, if she decides down the road, and we're talking about different stages of abortion, there's a question about that. No woman wants to carry, we're talking about late term. No woman wants to carry a baby, their child, they've been holding for 6 months or longer, and abort it later. There has to be a reason for that. She has to have a medical reason. She's a mother. This is the thing about a choice for a woman to decide, not for a man, not for government. The woman, her physician, and a story. Thank you for the question.
All right. Representative Quinones?
Thank you, Nate. I believe abortion to be the most personal decision that any individual could make. And I believe that a woman should make that decision in consultation with their physician. And I believe that a woman should have privacy to what they do that is best for their medical reasons. That's the reality. Now, let's talk about what we have to do, not only as a district, but as a state, so that this does not continue to expand and Arizona becomes less restrictive. This session, a number of us from the Democrats, we fought arduously and hard to prevent a 15-week ban on abortions. Because again, we believe that that decision belongs to a woman, an individual. But what's happening is there are other districts here that are electing members to the legislature, and we're outnumbered. So we can talk about how we all agree that this is a decision that ultimately belongs to an individual and to a woman. But what we also have to do is take our resources and our talents and support candidates in swing districts so that we can bring them to the legislature and we can prevent these attacks on women and on abortions. Because if not, these speeches and these very passionate claims will be just that. So in order for us to really get on the forefront of this issue, we need to be ready to support candidates in swing districts so that we can change the makeup of the district and elect more Democrats so that a woman's right to her body and what she chooses to do with her reproductive rights is defended. Thank you, Nate.
Before we move on to the other candidates, Mr. Lisi, you're raising your hand?
Yes, I have something to add. A lot of states, they have still existing laws on what happens. God help us if this passes in the Supreme Court. If it does, what steps are we going to do here in the state to protect a woman's rights? As legislators, I think we should try to find a way. There are existing laws that a woman and also her physician, anyone helping that person, can be prosecuted and fined. Now, I don't believe we should enforce this law, obviously. And as legislators, I think we should find some way that we can strengthen this or get this away from the books and address it. It's a long-standing premise that's been on the books. It needs to be addressed and it needs to be removed. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Ross?
Thank you, Nate. So I just want to start by clarifying that when we're talking about abortion, it's not just people who identify as women who get abortions. We have our trans men as well who get abortions. So I'm going to use the phrase when a person wants to open it up to everyone and be inclusive. So I agree with what everyone says, that is private between a human, that person, and their doctor, that choice. But to answer your question directly on what would I do if it's overturned, I would turn to the people who are in the trenches every day, Planned Parenthood, which also I've been endorsed by them, to say what work needs to be done. I would turn to the people who do the work every day, who knows this in and out, instead of just running with the ball and not having a good play first. That's what I would do. I would turn to my community and say, let's come up with a plan on what needs to be done to make sure that people are getting safe reproductive care. Thank you, Nate.
All right, thank you. And Mr. De Los Santos, you're raising your hand?
Yes, I think, if we're going to talk about concrete steps, I just wanted to be sure that we talk about the upcoming election for Maricopa County Attorney. The county attorney here is going to be the person who will be in charge of prosecuting or declining to prosecute abortion charges or charges against people who have abortion. And it's incredibly important that we elect Julie Gunnigal, a Democrat, to this office who has pledged to decline to prosecute those offices. And I think another important thing we've got to do is get a ballot initiative onto the ballot to protect the right to abortion in a state here in the state of Arizona, because we know that the voters reject this kind of radicalized ideas about politicians controlling people's reproductive freedoms. We completely reject that. And we know that if we put it on the ballot and put it to the voters, we will win. And so I think those are two very important concrete steps we've got to take.
All right, Ms. Cavero?
The fact that we're even having this question today is appalling. This rule was over almost 50 years ago. And to think that anyone can define and decide reproductive health for an individual, it is so upsetting. The decision should be between the individual, God, and their physician. I would never want someone to tell my mother, my daughters, or myself what to do with my body. And I commend the men who acknowledge that. But these are the steps that we have to talk about. What are they? It's to introduce legislation that allows an individual to the right to choose their own health care, despite the national discussion. They also need to support individuals to have autonomy on their own bodies and their reproductive health. We need to fully support centers or services in these next couple of months that provide the educational services on reproductive health as well as others. And we need to talk about it today because it's coming right around the corner. So thank you for this question.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Wood?
Yes, thank you for the question. And all of my colleagues here, fellow candidates on the call, have done a good job of answering the question. And so I have very little much to add other than I would do whatever I can to make sure that women and our trans women have every right to make the decision of what to do with their body. Me as a minister, I believe in free will. I've heard someone mention God. I believe my fellow candidate here mentioned God. And it is between a woman and God. But above all, we all have free will. And women should not be, their womb should not be bound by laws and government. Government should not have control over anybody's womb and what goes on in there. And I do not believe that anybody should be prohibited from considering all the options on the table, what is best for their life and for their family. I have talked to many of my sisters who have been faced with making that decision to have an abortion. They do not enter into it lightly. And the way people make it sound is if women are just frivolously, just recklessly saying, oh, I'm going to get pregnant and then I'm going to go do this. No, it's not what it's about. This is a very personal, very private, very deep decision that every woman has had to face. I had to face this decision at one point in my life. I don't know if I was ready to have a child, and I had to go, and I spoke with Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, when I was in college, they were my friend. I went to Planned Parenthood all the time because I wanted to make sure I was doing right, had the proper contraceptives, but I too found myself in a situation where I had to make a decision. And it was a very troubling decision I had to make, but I had to make it. And I looked at all my options. Now I decided to have my son, but I have many people in my family that have decided otherwise, and they need support. And so I would be there on the front line. And I agree with Ms. Ross. I would turn to the individuals who do this all the time, Planned Parenthood and other advocates, and I would get direction from them on how we can go about addressing steps if this particular law gets overturned, and it looks like that is where we need to be. So we need to get ahead of this and start to put our plans in place. But I'm definitely for women having that right to make that choice.
All right, and Ms. Cavero, you had something you want to add?
Well, I mean, I agree with Janelle Wood. And, you know, one thing, again, I'm going to bring this up again and again. Another opponent who's not on this call today. And I want to tell you, I mean, if people don't know, she voted to defund Planned Parenthood. Catherine, you know, she wanted to shut down our women's clinics. And at some point, you know, make it illegal for us to even choose our insurance plans. This is not democracy. And it doesn't allow us to choose. So I just want to bring that up for, you know, other discussion if anybody wanted to chime in, but now I wanted to, you know.
I'm glad you brought that up. Janelle, you know, our names, that alone is messing with me. She's Janelle and I'm Janelle. So yeah, Janelle, I agree. It is very troubling to me that our other candidate that is running for Senate did not believe we were worthy, nor the voters were worthy enough tonight to be on this call to speak to the voters that she is asking to vote for her. And I find that quite troubling. And I agree, Janelle, that we showed up. And when you show up, people see that, and they get a chance to hear from us. So I agree. I'm glad that you brought that up, and I appreciate that. And look, I appreciate you being here, and as well as my other fellow colleagues, taking our time on a Friday night to be here for our voters, for our constituents to represent LD 11. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And well, I'll start with Mr. Butts on this next question. From a families who are concerned about a potential recession, what would you do as a legislator to strengthen the social safety net to protect families who may lose their jobs and health benefits?
Thank you, Nate. So first, I'm a homeowner, and you know, when we talk about home values and the concern about a possible recession, I'm hearing that. I'm hearing that in our communities. Communities are concerned. People are concerned about the direction of our country. And so, Arizona, like I said, we're a great state, and we are in a good position to be able to help families that need the assistance. And so, with the surplus that we all know about, we can all bring our communities together. We can bring our districts together, and we can figure this out collaboratively. And if we don't do that, that without that collaboration, we're going to struggle leaving some populations of our community behind. So from a collaborative standpoint, I believe that we have the position, the resources, the finances, the great intellect in our state to pull together and resolve any type of concerns about a recession in our state. Now, if we're in a position where we do need to act fast, I believe we can do that. The great the energy and the efforts that we have seen in our legislature in the past and currently right now have shown that there we do prioritize the quality of life for all of our communities. And so I'm grateful for that. And so as an African American, having a home, with the concern of a possible recession and losing equity in my home, I definitely can understand that. And so I really want to make sure that our voters understand that, we see these conversations, we hear these conversations as we're knocking on doors. And so we take this very seriously. And so I'll stick to this point that we can collaboratively solve this problem because we have the financial resources in our surplus. It's just going to take legislation to make sure that no population is left behind in terms of a solution. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lisi?
Well, this is a very complicated issue. If something does happen like this, as my colleague just said, we have a $5.3 billion surplus here. Now, there are a couple of things. A person is worried about the fact that being able to put gas in their car, being able to pay for their homes, the renters' cost is going up, our mortgages are going up, cost of living is going up, we're dealing with inflation. Even when we dealt with the last recession that we had, which was devastating to the economy, we're maybe on the edges of that right now. There are a lot of changes that are coming down the pipe. What are we going to do about it? Well, back during those times, I think we had to come across with a practical sense of mind with both Democrats and Republicans to come across with some solutions. We had to sell off some things down there at the Capitol. We don't want to have to do that, but that may be a result. We may have to do that. What we should do is try to understand that this is not only a public devastation that could happen, but it's also in the private sector. If we are able to bridge that gap with Republicans and Democrats and also enhance that relationship between public and private minds of thinking, we can come across with some solutions. Also, with this $5.3 billion surplus, we need to give some ease to the citizens of LD11, state of Arizona, with affordable housing. We need to have some place for people to live in. This is going to be the first thing. Where are these people going to go to live? $500,000, $300,000 rents are going up. Is out of our control, but we need to have some sort of safety net in place. And I think developing these partnerships with public and private would definitely help. Affordable housing, that's the first thing that we need to attack, is where these people, if something like this does happen, can we use those resources? Like Representative Marcelino says, taxpayers did this with the tax dollars. That needs to be thoughtfully applied across the market, across the public sector. How can we best use that? And I think as legislatures and also with the private sector, we need to come together to try to find solutions, because it's going to be a little bit different than it was last time. You can't step, as the great philosopher Confucius said, you can't step in the same water twice. There's going to be something different about that. And we need to bring the professionals, legislatures, and the private sectors to the table and come across with some good solutions that's going to work for everyone, especially people in my district and the less fortunate that are going to be affected most, if not all, by the situation that's coming. Thank you for the question.
All right, thank you. Representative Quinones?
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Mr. Lisi, for mentioning what I had said earlier. the recession is happening not only here in Arizona, but nationally. So we need to take a national perspective in terms of how we approach it. I think Arizona can be a leader in reducing the recession. We are a border state. So one of the things that we've been really busy doing at the legislature is increasing trade between Mexico and Arizona. I think we can continue to do that. And I think our neighbor states should follow. Additionally, there's a recession because the roads aren't adequate. That means that produce and products are not traveling from their destination to where they need to arrive. And then as a result, the sellers are then able to increase the prices. So I think we also need to look at infrastructure and particularly ensuring that our roads and bridges are adequate so that those materials can be brought here. A lot of individuals right now are struggling with $6 gallon, $6 a gallon for gas. We need to remove right now the sales tax on gas so that individuals can afford to fill their cars with gas. Another thing that has been mentioned a number of times is the surplus, and particularly how this recession is going to impact housing. With that in mind, one of the things that I have been advocating for at the legislature is $100 million going to the Arizona Housing Trust Fund. $100 million going to the Arizona Housing Trust Fund. What this will do is it will provide rental assistance. It will provide affordable housing, which then also leads to our relationship to our cities and towns where we need to look at zoning and why we're not able to build as many houses as we need in order to support the number of individuals that live here. Additionally, we need to look at a renter's tax credit. Every individual, Mr. Butts mentioned being the homeowner, we need to look at all of those issues in order for people to have dollars in their pockets for them to not have to struggle in their daily lives. So those are a few of the items that we can do. I think Arizona can lead. I think we can enhance our relationship with the federal government, and I will continue to do those things as I've done since appointed. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Ross.
Thank you, Nate. So to answer your question, I think I agree with Representative what he stated about the very first thing with this big solution staring us in the face of the surplus. And we want to make sure that goes toward our hurting families rather than just sitting and gathering dust. And more specifically, I would say put that toward more affordable housing, especially in Levine. The housing costs how costs are going up. It's really scary. Childcare, making that more affordable. Also healthcare, making that more affordable. And most importantly, providing a living wage. We're so happy about $15, but if we're being honest, that's not truly a living wage. Too many people are living paycheck to paycheck and are just one paycheck away from being unsheltered and not having a place to call home. We need that livable wage to support families. People should be able to go to the doctor or the hospital without falling behind on their essential bills. So to answer your question, what I think we should do as legislators is not have that money just sitting collecting dust and giving it to the people, finding ways to provide resources to our communities that need it the most. Thank you, Nate.
All right, thank you. Ms. Cavero.
This is a very large question that hits upon multiple aspects. So there's not one perfect answer. There's probably 40 different ways to answer this plus. And, one will start with the federal level. Absolutely. The president just, gave Arizona $2.6 million and the governor's been sitting on it for how many months? And unfortunately hasn't even dispersed it and decided where we can support certain programs. And like our representative said, it could have been easy to just, provide a gas card to these challenged families or whomever was interested during these tough times. I mean, prices have almost gone a third up and continues to grow. Don't think they're going to go down all of a sudden. And more importantly, our representative hit on the most important within the state, which is this Arizona Housing Trust Fund, which is in our Department of Housing. It's bottomed out. For those who haven't paid attention, it needs to be fully funded again. And these resources drive incentives for our developers to build affordable housing in our cities and towns statewide. So when we talk about affordable housing, there is an opportunity. We just need to properly fund those opportunities. And as the representative and other colleagues, Wesley had said, Yes, we do have a surplus. So why don't we drive that into certain programs that we can foresee? Inflation's going up. We have minimum wage that doesn't even compare to inflation. We can't compete. We need to increase minimum wage. And not even just basing it out from just minimum wage, our teachers pay. And being able to, again, compete. At the end of the day, you're trying to make a holistic approach for these working families to survive. And everything impacts, from the opportunities that are given to them, education that's provided to them, to trying to just put food on your table and drive to work. You know, I promote universal childcare so working families and moms and parents can go back to the work field post-COVID. You know, it's been challenging times, and there are other opportunities, and we need to consider them now more than ever, because the only thing you can't get back is time. So families are impacted every day by what we can foresee and is repetitive history again. So we need to address this, and I appreciate the question. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Ms. Wood?
Yes, I concur with pretty much everything that everyone said. I want to add, though, that in our particular district, when I looked at our data, we have upwards of 82% in certain pockets of our district that rent. And so this inflation, these high rental prices are driving these people out. As a matter of fact, I just dealt with a family yesterday who called me, a family of 6 who were evicted from their home. And they have 4 children, 2 adults. Both adults are working, and they can't make a living wage together in order to keep their home and to keep their roof over their head. And what we've had to do in that particular incident is we've had to turn to different nonprofit organizations. There are many nonprofit organizations that work together. And so when I hear Mr. Lisi talk about public-private partnerships, not only do we need to work with our community, there are many community members in place that can help our people during these times, but we also need to work with our state departments. You know, ADOT sits on some money to help with transportation. So why not tap into them for some gas vouchers for our families sitting on DES, those families that are getting already assistance, those single mothers. We have a high number of single family households in our district, and being able to make a way or a pathway to help them with transportation costs, to help them with managing their dollars. We have to educate people, and we have to bring them to the table, because me and you and all of us can sit here. We all have a different experience than our people in our community. Let's sit down and talk to our people, have our people in our community understand we are headed for a recession. Let me tell you what that means. Talk to me about what you're going to need from me as a legislator, so that I can put some things in place to help you. People know what they want. They know what they need. They know it better than we do, because we don't live in it. So I believe we need to collaborate not only with the experts at the table, our economists at the universities, our state department leads in economics, but we also need to bring the people that this impacts the most, which is our residents, our constituents, bring some of them to the table so that we can share with them what we would like to see happen, and have them say, no, I need you to focus on this first. We get this taken care of, then I can take care of that. And so I believe that that's a part of the puzzle. And again, I concur with what many of you have said. It is a complicated issue, but it can be done if we all work together. And that is including our constituents in that conversation. Thank you. Great question.
All right, and Ms. Kamal Abdul-Samad?
Thank you for that great question. And I agree with all the great ideas that the other fellow candidates have shared. To keep this brief, I believe that the jobs and educations are key. A livable wage and laws against price gouging will render our social safety network a minor issue. Also, the $6 billion surplus that we talked about earlier, about we can put aside about the half of the funding to go work towards this recession. Another thing that, like Rep. Marcelino mentioned, is about the infrastructure. So we need to improve our infrastructures in our this LD. And when we improve our infrastructure, then we can bring in more jobs. One of the things that we are receiving is from the 2021 Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Job Acts, where Arizona will receive $76 million to build electric car charging stations along the interstate. This will give us more job opportunities as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, this next question will probably be our last. We'll do closing statements after. Oh, Mr. De Los Santos, you had something you want to add?
I didn't get to go.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped you.
No,
He needs
thank
to
you.
go. Let him get his shot.
Well, I appreciate the question because it's an important one. And the fact is that when a recession comes, communities like ours, working communities, communities where there is substantial poverty and communities of color will be devastated the hardest. Right now, Wall Street is not hurting. The billionaires are not hurting. Corporations are seeing record profits. And so when the recession comes, we need to be ready and prepared to act to protect working people and to protect poor people and to protect children and the elderly in this community. Here's some of the things I would put forward. First, we're going to need to beef up our unemployment program. The state, and led by Republicans, is notorious for skimping on unemployment benefits. Number two, we're going to call for an eviction moratorium. Nobody should be evicted from their household because they cannot pay rent during a recession. That is morally reprehensible. Housing is a human right. And in a state like ours, where it gets extraordinarily hot, this can be deadly. Last year, over 350 people were killed. In fact, I would say they were murdered by the awful and atrocious policies and our failure to invest in working people because they died of heat exposure in our streets. They died of heat exposure in the wealthiest society in human history. Shame on the politicians. In a recession, if we do not institute an eviction moratorium, we risk that number going up and up and up. And finally, you mentioned concerns about healthcare. This perfectly illustrates why it is a terrible public policy idea to tie healthcare to employment. Healthcare is not a benefit of employment. Healthcare is not a commodity to be bought and sold. Healthcare is a human right that must be accessible to every single human being in the state of Arizona, regardless of the color of our skin, regardless of how much money we make, regardless of whether we're in recession or not, which is why we must absolutely institute a universal public healthcare program that is available to every single Arizonan at all times. Doing less than that will lead to death.
Okay, thank you. All right, and I apologize again. Well, let's come and start with you on this next question. Yeah, it's a two-parter. The first part is what's your general view on police funding? Should it be higher or lower or about where it is now? And the second part is what do you think about the recent increases in the city of Phoenix's police budget?
That question is to me first. I oppose the funding increases for the city of Phoenix. The city of Phoenix Police Department is under federal investigation on many fronts. They have been found, or at least the Department of Justice alleges, the federal Department of Justice alleges that they are taking illegally the possessions of homeless people, that they are engaging in prosecutions on a political basis, which is an egregious violation of the First Amendment and an egregious violation of public trust. Meanwhile, as I just stated, the people in our community are hurting. They've got bloated budgets for an inefficient and ineffective police department right now. Meanwhile, we have people on our streets that are dying of heat exposure. I want to repeat that point. They are dying of heat exposure while the politicians are willingly giving tens of millions of dollars in funding to departments that already take up the vast majority of the budget. It makes no sense. It's not centered around our communities. I think we need to invest in healthcare. I think we need to invest in housing. I think we need to invest in education.
All right, Mr. Lisi.
Oh, fantastic question. Given the climate that we have today with the policing and me speaking as a minority, it's a very complicated and passionate topic for me. I can honestly say that when I get pulled over by an officer, that I'm a little bit afraid, and it shouldn't be that way. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be interpreted the wrong way. There are some situations that have happened where people have lost their lives at the hands of police officers. As far as funding goes, walking the streets, collecting my signatures, I ran across a gentleman that had been in the district for about 20 years. Business owner, family, father, looking out for his family. And he told me, I asked him, and he said, well, I have a concern. I think I may want to move out of this district. And I asked him, why would you want to do that? You've been here 20 years, you got a construction company. He says, I don't feel safe. He said, my car, now I have to lock it because I'm afraid of the homeless issue that we have going on right now, that people are homeless down the street. They have things that they need. We have to address that. The policing, yes, you have to keep, in order for us, we're talking about training for these guys, not to disregard what my colleague said. We have to be careful about policing. We still need police because when all of this happens and when all is said and done, the communities that are underprivileged, that are poor, unfortunately, the crime goes up in these communities. I don't know the reason, but I do know the crime goes up. We are the first ones to see things start to happen because people are in need of resources. The $5-point-something million, yeah, it needs to be allocated across the board. But to say that we need better quality of police, we need better instruction for the police, but we do need them. Now, how that money is going to be divvied out, do we need a better quality of policemen? Do they need to be trained better? Yes. But to say we need to cut the funding, what are we going to get then? We got the bottom of the bottom. These are the people, it's as we said before, if you pay the teachers more, you're going to get a better quality of the teacher. You get a better resource, you get a better return on your dollar, you get better safety. So yes, I do believe that we need to make sure where this money is going, and they need to be held accountable. When something's happening, the police force should be the first person that steps up to the plate and said, this officer did something wrong. And as protectors and servers of our community, this person needs to be brought up on charges, needs to be investigated, not hidden, not delayed. We need accountability, safety, training, and education, and also community. I talked to a couple officers. I think we need to be worried more about the community. I don't want to be afraid of the officer that's coming to help me, afraid to call the cop when I need him, when my house gets broken into, when I'm a victim of crime. I want to feel that. So we need to start to develop a relationship where officers in our community are actually being a part of the community. They need to be coming out. We need to do outsourced resources for these officers that are servers too, to be more, have more in common, to be more affiliated and associated with the people that they're here to protect. If they are involved more, they will care more, and we're not going to be afraid that much of them. There are going to be some isolated incidences of these tragedies, like what happened to Mr. Floyd. This guy is the worst scum of ever, but he's brought light, and I applaud Mr. Barack Obama for these cameras that we have to have on our chest today. Because without these cameras, some of these crimes would not even be known. They've been swept under the carpet. So accountability as well. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for the question. And I look forward to working with police officers and community to bring these two together and be more accountable for what happens.
All right, Representative Quinones is next, but before we move on, Mr. De Los Santos, you got your hand up?
Can't hear you.
I think we need to be extraordinarily clear about what the budget allocation was from the city of Phoenix yesterday. That was a pay increase that included a nearly $100,000 increase for the Phoenix police chief, who already makes nearly $200,000. That is an unwise and a reckless investment when we have people who are homeless, when we have education that is not being funded. If we want to prevent crime, which should be the number one or among the number one top priorities for all of us, we need to make important investments in education and healthcare and housing and mental health care resources, and ensuring our communities have what they need to be safe, whole, and as Nikita says, resilient, safe, secure, and resilient. That is what makes our communities, not more funding for the Phoenix police chief's salary. Simply doesn't relate.
All right, Representative Quinones.
Thank you, Nate. This is a complicated issue, and I think public safety is an issue that will require absolute leadership. And I want to make that very clear. Public safety requires leadership. It doesn't require, and fanning of the flames is not going to help. So I think we need to have an honest conversation about public safety and why it's important. If you talk to neighbors, and particularly in certain areas of our district, that is their number one concern. As representative, we are asked to represent the community, and we are asked to represent the voices of multiple individuals. So I will say that this particular issue is one that will require absolute leadership, and fanning of the flames on either side is not going to help. I agree with what Mr. Lisi said. If these additional dollars are going to be provided, then they need to be provided in terms of training. As a member of the Public Safety and Military Affairs Committee member, I meet with countless individuals from law enforcement, and they tell me what their issues are. And I will tell you what I say to every single organization that I meet with. What are you doing to establish a relationship with our community? What are you doing to establish a relationship to engage our community? And that's important. That's important because if we paint every single individual or every single agency as the foe and as the enemy, I think we're doing a disservice. I think we're doing a disservice because we are antagonizing individuals when we should be working on creating a relationship with individuals. So I think this issue requires a lot of thoughtful conversation. I think it requires a lot of thoughtful collaboration. And I think it's an opportunity for leaders to bring people together to identify different measures where they can work together to ensure that our neighborhoods are safe, just like our neighbors are asking us to do.
Mr. Lisi, you got your hand up?
Yes, I want to pay a little bit of attention to what's going over in California. As we well know, one of the, I think if not mistaken, in San Francisco, one of the attorneys have been petitioned to be recalled and is no longer there. And we have there where a guy was there for the right reasons. He wanted to look at the criminal justice system in a more liberal way. He had great intentions, but as Mr. Marcelino said, if these thoughts and intentions are not carefully looked at, evaluated, you have what happened over there. And I don't want to see that happen over here where people were, and I saw this, people were putting signs on their car windows, please don't break my window. The door is open. Now, whether we're talking about education, whether we're talking about economics, whether we're talking about tech companies coming here, children's safety, walking the streets, nobody wants to be walking down the street and get attacked and their resources being taken away from them, and they're not going to be prosecuted or deterred from committing a crime. I don't care if the crime, it has to be divvied out in a way that's fair. But to overlook the effects of crime on the overall community, growing, expanding, the safety, is really unfortunate if someone thinks that we can get away with not having officers here to look. I don't carry a gun. And I look to the officers to provide security for me. And I look at the gun issues that happen over in Texas. We need to look at that in the schools as well. I mean, they provided some protection, but again, we're talking about training. We had a group of officers that were outside the door of the school and didn't know what to do. Training. We need officers. They need to be trained. We need the best of the best to represent law enforcement. And unfortunately, in order to get the best, you have to pay for it. That's it. That's all I have to say.
All right, Ms. Ross.
So you had a two-part question, Nate, and in our very recent past, the city of Phoenix had the deadliest police force in the entire nation. We are the 5th largest city, but had the deadliest police force in the entire nation. So to answer your first question, Nate, I don't think funding for the police budget should be increased. And to answer your second question about the city of Phoenix increase and how do I feel, I'm very disappointed that money should be spent on resources in our communities. And to clarify, communities that are paid lower wages and are living closer to the poverty line or even in poverty have a harder time with resources in their community. And so they're also over policed. And so the statistics on the surface would look like there's a higher crime rate when a lot of times those communities are actually over policed. There's a lot of petty, like getting arrested for minor offenses that don't happen in more affluent neighborhoods. So to answer your questions directly, Nate, I don't think the police funding should have been increased. I'm disappointed that the city of Phoenix did that. And I, as someone with experience, I have worked and helped develop the Office of Accountability and Transparency for the city of Phoenix. So I was one of there was a core group of us in the very initial phase, which is the old office. So previously, when we had this title of being the deadliest police force in the entire nation, the police would investigate themselves. So myself and a group of other dedicated community members, we worked really hard with our city council member, Carlos Garcia, to develop the Civilian Review Board, which is now called the Office of Accountability and Transparency, to ensure that we decrease that. And the answer is not putting more money into this system that is broken. The answer is also not training. Police have gone through so many trainings. It's not getting better. We need to reinvest that money into our communities. We need to give resources to our communities, to our families, because we know that when our schools are properly funded, when our communities have proper funding and resources, they thrive. And that's what we want. Thank you, Nate.
All right, Ms. Cavero.
We brought a couple things up today, and I just want to say, to preempt this, that our criminal justice system is full of policies and practices that are flawed, outdated, and have been a burden to our taxpayers. So I'll just start with that. But I can't speak for the rest of the state, but I'll talk about my district. Addressing crime with less officers on the job has been an issue. Our neighborhoods, if you hit doors in all three areas, their biggest issue is public safety. Our neighborhoods have now created their own security networks, neighborhood watches, to decrease crime. You walk into streets and you have to have certain support to even just walk that street. And if you don't experience that, then you don't really know our district. I'll support funding in all forms, both neighborhood watches and portions of the police force. I say that because our communities of color have the highest number of 911 calls. And because we do, we have the longest response time. And it's not an easy answer, but I have to pass bills that help good cops and misconduct of bad cops. Just as State Senator Chris Lee in Hawaii just recently, law enforcement needs to be accountable. And I know another colleague of mine stated that. We need to lift our good cops and expose the bad cops. The rhetoric of defunding the police is a challenge in our community. It's the conduct and accountability. As a state legislator, I do not have authority to determine the roles and responsibilities. However, we have the authority over police officer standard training, post certification. And so I fully support diversity hiring and training. And I'd be clear about this when we're talking about funding the police, because diversity hiring and training is deeply impacting our district. Thank you so much.
All right, Ms. Wood is next, but before that, Mr. Lisi, you got your hand up. Was there something you wanted to add?
Yes, I just have a little bit to add. Sorry about that. While I was collecting signatures, I was in I'm not going to mention the neighborhood, but believe it or not, collecting signatures, me dressed the way I'm dressed, knocking on the doors in the heat, I was by a voter. I had a voter pull a gun on me. And I was really afraid. I had a voter pull a gun on me, ask me what I was doing, walk in the neighborhood, and I was on the street. He thought he was being threatened, but I had a gun pulled on me. And of course I was afraid, but being the cool mind that I am, I didn't inflate the situation. And we end up, departing in a mutual crazy sort of way. But I drove around, driving home, took me about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I could not find a police officer on the street. To Ms. Janelle's point, there's not enough officers for a citizen. They having to feel like they protecting themselves. Now, it could have been other reasons why I got the gun pulled on me, but he didn't feel safe. And frankly, I didn't have anybody to report this to because I'm driving around personally and couldn't find a police officer to report this guy to. And that happened to me personally, collecting signatures for my ballot. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Wood.
Thank you for the question. This has been near and dear to my heart. I've been doing a lot of work in the community to keep our community safe. I believe, I concur with many of the comments already. I'm not going to say too much other than I'm going to answer the question. You asked the question, did I agree with the police getting a raise? Am I correct? Getting more funding for the city of Phoenix, right?
Yes, yeah.
And I don't agree with that because it looks like we are awarding misconduct, right? We have a city police force that is like Oscar de los Santos said, they are under federal investigation. I have been working with the Department of Justice on this with the city of Phoenix. This is near and dear to my heart. And so when someone is under investigation, that means there have been patterns of misconduct that have been allowed to happen. And so when we give people a raise, me being an employer, if I'm going to give an employee or anybody a raise, that means I agree with their conduct, they're doing great, and I want to see them continue. When we give people raises in our police community, we have to be clear that this is sending a message that this type of behavior is okay. And I was shocked that they got the increase. I understand people said we need to have public safety. I am for public safety. I'm not against public safety, but I am against people being awarded for misconduct. I am against that. The other thing is when we talk about resources, where that money should have went was to our crisis assistance programs. And we should put civilians and people in place, social workers, mental health counselors, doctors, individuals that can be affiliated and work with the police. Tempe does a really good job of this. I was on the Tempe Public Safety Task Force, and they do a really good job of making sure that they pour resources into human services when people have an emergency, 911. Then that spares our police officers from going out on those particular calls. And then the funding that we do have police, they can actually go on calls, like Mr. Lisi said, to actually handle crime, right? Like my colleague over here, Ms. Janelle says, to go handle crime. But when we have them so pulled in every direction, trying to help somebody who's having a mental health breakdown, somebody who wants to commit suicide, domestic violence, which was on the rise, puts our officers in a lot of danger. And we need to put people in place that actually know how to handle domestic violence situations, people that are trained, that are educated. That's where we put that funding. So no, I did not agree with that. I did not agree with all the raises. Especially right now when we're under a federal investigation. That just sends the wrong message to the community.
Mr. De Los Santos, you got your hand up?
Yes, I thought, Janelle, that was a terrific response, and it's important to highlight the alternative ways that funding can be used to make our communities safer and more secure. And I also wanted to highlight one bill that when I was the head of public policy for the food banks that I got through, which helps public policy without spending any additional dollars and without putting communities at risk. And that is that before this bill got passed, people who had minor drug charges were banned for life from getting access to food stamps. I worked with the coalition, including, by the way, police, including criminal justice reform advocates, including people who work to combat poverty, to change that bill. And so now when people are ready to reenter society from prison, they have the support they need and they don't need to turn to petty crimes to survive. That is the kind of policy that can make our community safer without having to give pay raises of $100,000 to people who are already overpaid.
All right, Ms. Koma Abdul-Samad.
That's a very important question. Public safety is a wide-ranging topic. Policing and police reform is a complicated subject where we need to bring everyone to the table for solution, and it should be ongoing. I believe that policing and our entire criminal justice system needs to be reformed. And by reformed, we need to bring our police department into the 21st century. We need to use more technology adequately, define the job of the police officers, and just like any other job, when they fail, they must be held accountable. Pay raises needs to be based on strict qualifications and education. As to your question about Phoenix Police recent pay raise, unfortunately, in order to maintain the bare bone of the police department, that pay raise was necessary. Other municipalities are harvesting new officers already trained by Phoenix taxpayers' dollars with officers of higher salaries. There is so much more that needs to be done, but it can only be done one step at a time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Butts?
Thank you, Nathan. Just to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly, you're asking about what's my view on police funding? Should it be higher, lower, the same? And then the second question is, what are my thoughts on recent increases in the city of Phoenix police funding?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I do want to address this question. I do feel honored to be able to address this question. Number one, because police officers, they have very special careers. And so we will never know the risks that they take on a day-to-day basis to protect our families, to protect our property, to protect our civil liberties. We will never know what the risks they take on a day-to-day basis. I know because I was a police officer before. I know what it's like. So I can speak to police officers, I can speak to families, that are hearing our rhetoric about this question. And so I want families of police officers and police officers to understand this right now today, my stance on this. I support both our law enforcement and I support both our communities by investing, reallocating department funds to make sure, like Mrs. Wood said, she said that we need to have a separate group of responders that respond to substance abuse calls and mental health calls. And if we do that, if we separate those calls, our police officers will have more time to get to our families, to get to domestic issues, because response times are incredibly out of sort right now. And so that would help police officers tremendously by being able to respond directly to incidents that do not involve only substance abuse and only mental health crises. And so I want to say that, but also there's another element here too. As an educator, I mentioned that education and public safety, they are competing for funds, they're competing for tax dollars. And so we have to be careful about our rhetoric about both of those particular service jobs, public service, and because they are very crucial to our economy, they're very crucial to our communities. And so I want people to know that supporting law enforcement officers with increased ongoing training doesn't stop. Training is ongoing. There are always new techniques. There are always new populations that you have to deal with. The problems of our society change and change and change. So you constantly need training. And so that should not be viewed as a one-time stop all, because police officers get promoted. Police officers transfer into different districts. New police officers come in. And so training is an ongoing phenomenon of the organization. And so lastly, I want to say that supporting investment and increased mental health and PTS counseling, police officers experience an insurmountable amount of stress in their 8-hour shift, let alone if they're working 12 hours a day. They have a lot of stress that they're dealing with. And so because of that, they need PTSD counseling and treatment. So if funding was going to help that, I'm for it. I can't speak on salaries and who's getting what in terms of that particular question and clarification that Oscar raised, but I will say this. Police officers need support and they need funding, and that should be separate from the criticism that they're receiving from outside agencies. Thank you.
All right. Well, it's time for closing statements. Ms. Cavaro, do you want to start us off?
Well, it's been an entertaining evening, and I want to say thank you to my colleagues, to the voters for listening today, and to Clean Elections for even giving us this opportunity. We've talked about a lot of issues, but there are many more. And, as someone who is a small business owner, mother of two, and someone who is proud of our process, there is so much more that we can learn from one another. I have to say, we've had issues of hate and discrimination in the last couple of years, and our children have seen it, heard about it. And the only thing to combat hate and discrimination is by educating those of those differences. Education is key. Public education, educating about cultures, learning because you're respecting one another. And hopefully by respecting one another, you can build and bridge a lot of that gap. And today I want to close as issues we hadn't talked about. Good paying jobs, health benefits, voter protection rights, water sustainability. There's much more that our party is proud of and advocating for. And I know that each one of us on this call would fight for each of those issues. And today, I hope you share the word with other voters, because it's hard. It's an off cycle. Getting out to vote, sharing and encouraging people to vote is key for not just our race, but for the races statewide. Because at the end of the day, it's fighting for our families, our working families, and our children. And so I hope you consider supporting me. And I hope at the end of the day, you feel good about everything we fought for this election cycle.
All right, Ms. Wood.
Well, I want to say thank you to Clean Elections and to our voters and to my colleagues here on this call. Thank you for this rich, enriching conversation. And I've learned so much from you. And I have definitely have some great opportunities to grow. And so I appreciate that. But one thing that I recognize right now, tonight, as we sat here and talked, was that we got work to do. We got a whole lot of work to do. And that starts with relationships. We have got to come to the table together and stop the divisive behaviors that we have seen in our legislature. We have got to recognize that it's more about our people in our community, especially here in our district. As we've all discussed, our community faces many challenges, many obstacles, and they already have to deal with so many struggles when it comes to jobs, when it comes to paying their bills, when it comes to health care, when it comes to, when I was out walking, I met a man, he said, I would love to support you, but I don't have the right to vote. So us working to make sure we restore the right to vote for our ex-felons who have already done their time. And it seems like we continue to make them do it over and over again. And so we've got to do our work to make sure that they can participate in democracy, that they can participate in the leaders that get voted into office. We have to do our part to be a voice for them. And so I recognize that tonight, all the people that are on this call want to be that voice. All the people that showed up on this call demonstrated leadership courage. We all recognize we all don't have the answers, but we can work together and resolve some of these problems together. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take relationships, it's going to take collaboration, and it's going to take a lot of listening and a lot of trying to put ourselves in each other's shoes. Each one of us comes from a different vantage point, but I do believe each one of us has one thing in common. We deeply care about the people and the constituents in this district. And we care enough to put ourselves out here to say we want to publicly serve our people. We are here to serve however you need us to. And so as I wrap up my closing statement, I want you to look at every last one of us on this call and you do some soul searching and you determine who you want to be the leader and the voice for you, not only in the House, but in the Senate. It is up to you. We need leaders with courage. We need leaders that will speak up. We need leaders that don't care what other people think about it. We need leaders who care more about us than about their own reputations, about their own comfort levels, and about all recognition. It's not about that. It's about you. And so if you want people like that, you need to consider us on this call. We're here for you. I want you to vote for me, but I want you to vote for the best person for you, voter. Please learn more about my campaign. I'm at JanelleForArizona.com, and I can answer any of your questions if you want to go to my website. But I want you to vote because that is your right. Use it. Do not waste it. Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Ms. Abdul-Samad.
District 11, thank you for spending this evening with us. As stated, I'm running a clean election campaign. You, the electors, are my only concern. My bond is with you only. I want to hear from you. I will listen to you. I will keep you updated on the activities going on in the House. And I will take your concerns and discuss them with my Democratic colleagues and do everything possible to have your concerns addressed. Most essentials are I support public education. I support the preservation of our American democracy. And I will fight for our right to free and fair election. My name is Shams Abdus-Samad, and my website is shams4az.com. I look forward to bringing science to the table as an engineer and an educator. I'm asking for your vote on August 2nd to be your state representative. Remember, mail-in ballots will start going out on July 6th. Gracias, salamat, dhonnobad. Thank you everyone for your time.
All right, Mr. Butts?
Thank you. In my closing statement, I want to reference my opening statement. I mentioned that I'm a father. I'm a husband to a nurse practitioner. I'm a brother to 2 employees of Ford Motor Company. And I lived a life of public service as a police officer for 3 years and as an educator for 5 years. Now on the administration side of it, I totally understand the issues that we talked about today, as well as my colleagues. I agree with Mrs. Wood that we spoke all passionately about the issues that are facing our community. We live in a great state. We're in a great position to solve any challenge that we have right now. And so we're going to need every conscious voter, every voter to understand what our issues are, every voter to read about our issues, and every voter to be courageous about speaking on the issues that matter to them. And so I implore you to connect with all of us, connect with us, talk with us, reach out to us. I love social media. Connect with me on social media, on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, Michael D. Butts. And so I would love to talk more with you. I hope this was just a snapshot of what we think and how we feel, but not a conclusive full picture. So in order to talk to us, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. We'll be knocking on your doors. We'll be out in the community. You will see us because leadership is visible.
All right, Mr. De Los Santos?
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for participating in this debate. Again, my name is Oscar De Los Santos. I'm a former teacher in the area. I'm the proud son of immigrants. And one thing I didn't get the chance to mention is that I'm a man of faith and a Christian. I believe, as the Bible instructs, that every human being and every human person is made in and as the image of God. That endows us with human equality and human dignity. It's this basic belief that drives my passion for this work. It's why I believe that healthcare is a human right, that housing is a human right. And in fact, it's why I reject any and all donations from any corporation and any lobbyist. And I am funded solely by people who live in this district. In office, I will work to increase teacher pay, to reduce the cost of housing, and to make sure that people don't go bankrupt for seeking basic medical attention. Thank you. I hope I earned your vote. If you want to learn more, go to oscarforaz.com, and God bless you.
All right, Mr. Lisi?
Yes. I'd like to thank everybody for sitting in on the call and for the voters that are listening. It was very interesting, and I really got a chance to meet my fellow candidates that are running here. And I think it's a fine bunch of people that we have here. We're all stepping up to the plate. We have our different ideas and different positions. Hopefully the voter will be left up to you to decide. You know, I leave you with this. My mantra has always been diversity. I'm a very practical minded man. My doors will always be open to anyone. I'm a fantastic listener. I try to find solutions from both sides. I listen to both sides. I'm practical minded. I find solutions based on those things. I'm not a politician, new to the field, but I'm a great listener and a quick learner. So for you voters out there, I want to encourage you to look at this fine group of people and make your decisions. As Mr. Butts said, we'll be knocking on your door. And I feel that together we can. This has to be the mantra of this election, that we can reach across the aisle, we can come across with very practical solutions to different things. We all have different ways of looking at it, but at the end of the day, you have to be willing to put your things aside sometimes and step in other people's shoes. Everybody has a different experience. It's up to us as legislators here in the district to talk to everyone. Even though you may not agree with what they have to say, you need to listen to them. And I'm that person. I would appreciate your vote and your support very much. And you can reach me, ask me any questions, knock on my door. You can reach me at wesleasy.com. That's E-L with the E, that's Lisi with the L in front. So I appreciate all of you very much. I really enjoyed it. It's been such a pleasurous thing. And everyone have a fantastic evening. Thank you.
All right, Representative Quinones.
Thank you, Nate. Fellow colleagues, thank you. I really enjoyed our conversation tonight, and I really appreciate your passion and your leadership in our district. So thank you. Clean Elections, thank you for hosting us. Voters, you've had an opportunity to listen to all of us, and for that, you should be commended and applauded. Thank you for taking part in democracy. You make this great experiment in this country function. A lot of times I get asked, Marcelino, what drives you? Why do you do this? Why do you choose to be a leader? And the answer is simple. Life has been very kind to me. Life has been very kind to me. I came to this country as a young immigrant, and then I took advantage of all of the resources that this country has to offer. FAFSA, scholarships, mentorships. And as a result of that, I was able to earn my degree and then begin my servant leadership to this district. As an educator, working directly with the students and the parents, I continue to teach in our district now at the community college level. Eventually, I would join the Roosevelt School District Governing Board, where I would do my best to make life for people, and we actually brought results. And then working for a non-for-profit, and then eventually the university. And as you look at my trajectory, it's all been about service. It's been about plugging people together, building coalitions and collaboration so that we can make life better for others. Life has been good to me. I've got a responsibility to make sure that the same happens for others. As a legislator, I believe in active, thoughtful, and interactive leadership. That's why my office is always open. I've had individuals on this call go visit me at the Capitol because my door is always open. I've engaged with countless individuals. I've had countless students go and shadow me around because I want them to understand that they can do it too. And if you'll give me the opportunity to continue serving you, I commit my entire being to continue to support our students and our educators and our education level. I commit to supporting our community colleges so that our young people have a vision and an opportunity to pursue their dreams. And I commit to protecting your right to vote so that these unnecessary burdens and barriers that our colleagues on the other side are trying to implement our democracy do not work. So I invite you on this journey. Please visit Marcelino4az.com. You might be saying, why are you doing that? It's because my name is really long already, Marcelino. So I'm trying to shorten it as best as I can. Have a good night, and thank you for taking part in this.
All right, Ms. Ross.
Thank you, Nate. And to the voters, thank you for sticking through. We ran a little over time. And I want to share with you a little bit. While the average person was sleeping safely in their beds, I slept on park benches, which is how I know that criminalizing homelessness will never solve the problem. While the average person was sleeping soundly in their beds, I was sleeping in abandoned buildings, which is how I know about the importance of investing in our neighborhoods and our communities. While the average person was fast asleep in their beds, I was being bounced from foster home to foster home, which is how I know how vital it is to improve our foster care system and provide preventative resources for our families. The problem with most elected officials is they don't understand what it means to have uncertainty in their lives. It is so vital that we have true representation in the legislature. We need someone who has lived experiences and who will advocate for us. Once I am elected, I will continue, just as I am doing on the school board, to work with community members to draft bills that reflect our values and our needs. Join me and let's build a strong, secure, resilient community. It is vital that our districts with the largest number of Black people have true representation. If you have any questions about my campaign or my stances, please email me at nikita@nikitaross.com, and my website is nikitaross.com. Thank you all so much for sticking to this through the end. Have a good night. Thank you, Nate.
All right, well, this concludes our debate. To the candidates, we thank you so much for participating. To the voters, we thank all of you who took the time to watch the debate and inform yourselves before the August 2nd primary election. As a reminder, the voter registration deadline is July 5th and early voting begins July 6th. All registered voters, including independent voters, can participate in the primary. We encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov, that's azcleanelections.gov, for official accurate voting information.